Hello and welcome to Macro Decode. The base year of GDP is being revised from financial year 2011-2012 to 2022-23, and the revised series will be released on February 27. The previous revision of base year in 2015, as well as the back series revision thereafter, had become quite controversial. To talk about the discrepancies in GDP calculations and the importance of having robust data, we have with us J.B. Mohapatra, former chairman of Central Board of Direct Taxes. He has worked with the Finance Ministry for over 3 decades. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Sangeeta.
So, before we start discussing the impending revision of the base year, let me ask you one question. How important is it for the country to have robust data, especially robust and accurate GDP data?
GDP as a concept and as a term does not explain many things. It does not spell out the standard of living, the quality of life, does not factor in environmental issues. It does not account for unaccounted economy, underground economy, as they say. It does not account for household labor, work, etc. It does not account for volunteering activities. It doesn't account for many things, but it has got its own relevance. GDP per se can only mean a number,
Right.
but read with other factors, it has got a lot of meaning and relevance for everybody. For the government and for the people, it may mean setting out the right monetary policy, setting out the right fiscal policy, setting out the priorities in your budget. It can set out the taxation policies. It can tell businesses where to invest, what are the opportunities. It can tell investors how to invest and how to exit from investment. It means many things to many people, and it holds greatest significance for the government because that is a policy setting document. It also tells about many other things unrelated, like it can tell you about the per capita GDP, which may be, meaning income inequality, wealth inequality, right?
Okay.
So it may say how much money is getting, devolving upon the states, right? It's all coming from the GDP, how poor a state is compared to its neighbor states. So GDP's relevance and quality data getting into the GDP construction, it can never be underestimated at any point in time.
So, why there are a lot of apprehensions about the new revision of the base year? What are the changes being made in the calculation of GDP in the new revision? And how will these changes help us capture the data better?
GDP, the change of the base year, normally India follows a 10-year cycle. The last revision was in 2011-12. Now again, it will be in 2026, base year being revised to 2022-2023. Revision of the base year is actuated both by the requirements of the event system and also by many of the advices, external advices particular, the IMF's advice, right? In the IMF's November 2025 consultation paper, it was advised very clearly that India's national accounts on the questions of materiality, on the questions of granularity, on the questions of timelines are good to go.
Right.
But when it comes to coverage, it has got a C rating. C rating means it has got weaknesses, methodological weaknesses, which are hampering surveillance, right?
Okay.
So that is the reason as to why it has, the changes to the base year has happened. And along with the changes in the base year, many other things also are being rolled into this particular revision, which are very welcome to my mind.
Okay. So, in this particular revision, what are the new things that are going to be added or changed?
So, the first thing is the base year. As I told, the base year will change, and the new data sets will also come in. And the recent surveys also, it will give a sectoral spread. It's a larger sectoral spread will get into the data construction. Then informal sector tracking and tracing and valuing the informal sector in a more scientific manner. That is also one of the ideas of the recent revision. And the use of an accurate deflator, right? The deflator, when we get from the nominal GDP to the real GDP, we create a deflator, right?
Yeah.
So in India, the deflator is basically WPI,
That's
right? Now WPI is said to be very commodity heavy, right? Now finding out the real producer parity index, that PPI, that is one thing which has to be created. So this particular revision also will take into account the finding out the right deflator and whether single deflation or a double deflation will be required, both at the input and the output level.
and the release of the back series GDP data thereafter had become controversial, if you remember. Can you briefly explain the main objections that were raised among these revisions in 2024 thereafter?
The back series issue will always remain, right? When you are getting to new data sources, new data sets, right? So there will be difficulty in comparing one period to the another, right?
That's right.
That is why a credible back series of GDP, that is a requirement. In the last revision, we have a recast 2004, 2005 to 2011, 2012.
Yeah.
Okay. And this was done in the middle of a new regime which has come in. So there are many political angles which were given to, that particular effort by the government to change, the back series data based on new parameters, right?
Right.
So what was done is basically changes in the weightage of many of the parameters in the primary sector, in the tertiary sector, and in the secondary sector of the economy. So that changed. But at this point in time, the political regime has not changed, is not changing, right? It has not changed in the last decade, right? So the point is there will be no such allegations I can foresee for the back series data which will be coming out. Number one. And number two, the compelling reasons as to why the revision is being carried out because of the misrepresentation of the organized sector, the extensive discrepancies in the data between the production method and in the expenditure method to determine the, this GDP. These are compelling reasons as to why we need to have a new series of, GDP starting from 2022-23.
Okay. Okay. Do you remember any specific discrepancies, that people had pointed out?
So, basically discrepancies, they will come out because national accounts will insist on two methods to arrive at the GDP. One is the production method or the factor cost method, and the other one is the expenditure method. In the production or the factor cost method, we look at the annual value increase in some of the sectors, important sectors of the economy, forestry or fishing or mining or manufacturing or travel or electricity or gas or water or utility, then travel and transport, financial, etc. Then we look at quarter to quarter increase, then we predict that this would be the GDP for the current quarter or the current year. In the expenditure side, you just sum up the domestic consumption, the government's the fixed capital fixed capital formation and the net exports. Now, because the GDP is being determined under both very separate methods, sometimes there is a gap, but the gap is not that large. Sometimes the gap becomes large because of, basically, to me, assumption with regard to informal sector. Right? The informal sector here in India than what the data captures.
That's right.
So if you give an assumption to the informal sector, and that assumption does not appear in the final analysis become true, then there will be a mismatch. So that is why in this particular revision, and the IMF has also said that make that supply and use in framework, that what is being taken as input and what is being taken as output, that tables, that framework has to be strictly followed so that we will have not a very large mismatch.
Now, talking about the informal sector, what is the methodology used to estimate the gross value added from the informal sector? Now, everyone knows that, there is a lot of data is not available about the informal sector. What is the methodology used? And after demonetization and GST implementation. So these two events had actually hit the informal sector more than the formal sector. Do you
Correct.
think the extrapolation of data has been accurate after these two events?
I agree that the tracking and tracing the unorganized, unincorporated sector is one of the most difficult tasks, right?
Right.
Because they are not in the regulatory zone, as they say. So their data is hard to capture,
Yes.
right? So what has been done in 2011 is to find out a benchmark indicator method, which was done in 2011 using effective labor input, right?
Yeah.
And this GBA per worker, which was constructed in 2011, you multiply by total number of workers
Yes.
under the employment and unemployment survey,
Yeah.
right? So that is missing out two things. One is for determining GBA for subsequent years, you have extrapolated growth proxies
Right.
taken from the formal sector.
Yes.
Now, formal sector responds to situations very differently than the informal sector,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
Formal sector survived
Yeah.
the COVID. Formal sector survived the GST, turnaround. Formal sector will survive many things, but the informal sector crumbles,
Right.
right? It responds very differently to situations, right?
Right.
To a boom or a bust. Informal sector will react very differently. So that one. And the second thing is this particular, you know, GBA of the informal sector, it again extrapolates productivity from 2011. That productivity will keep on changing, right?
Yeah.
So productivity of 2011, you cannot extrapolate the productivity of a formal sector to the productivity of an informal sector. So these are two, big differences, and the two asymmetric point which has not made the calculations proper,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So what is being proposed is that they will be using ASUSE, that is the annual survey of the unincorporated sector enterprises, which will tell you about the performance of the unorganized sector. Also use the PLFS, that is the periodic labor survey, which will tell you, labor force survey, which will tell you about the trend in the employment in the unorganized sectors. So multiply the GVA, which you get from ASUS dataset, with the PLFS or worker number. Then you come to a reasonable construct of the informal sector's output.
Okay.
So I think it's much better than what was being followed earlier.
But if you remember during the demonetization GST times, actually the employment surveys also were not happening. We had a long gap.
Correct.
So will we be able to make up for that gap in these surveys? Will the data be accurate?
No, what has been committed is that PLFS and the ASUS, they will be the linchpin of the informal sector's GDP determination. So I believe that better survey, better quality survey, and systematic, timely survey will be very important in tracking the informal sector's GDP.
Right, right. And what about census? Like, we also haven't done census for a long time. So
That will impact. So along with this thing, along with the GDP revision, also we are doing the CPI and also the IIP.
Yeah.
So all these revisions are happening at one time, but the census data will be the primary data with regard to numbers, etc. Right? That will supplement for the years to come. We will get a better scientific idea on our GDP, even borrowing from the census data also.
right, right. And also, do you think the budget estimates, will that get affected because of the new data? Now the new data is coming after the budget.
See, the point is, if the GDP is greatly disturbed,
Right.
the numbers are greatly disturbed. In the allocation of funds to the states, there could be issues. The comparatively poorer states, that demarcation lines, if they are blurred or if they change drastically, then the central allocation to the states also may be reallocated, or there is a potential of reallocation of the central allocation to the states in some manner, the central grants, etc.
Right.
Number two is that suppose the GSDP of a state, it changes, its borrowing powers under the FRBM also will change.
That's right.
So that may affect also. So the point is, changes in the GDP will trigger many changes, many after effects, not just in budget, but in many other areas. And those areas we don't know for sure at this point in time what could be the areas which will get impacted.
Okay. Now, coming back to the robustness of data, any
Yeah.
data and also the GDP data, what are your suggestions to make in order to have a robust data of GDP so that, we could probably have a better policy?
Yeah. As we move in technology upwards, businesses and households will get formalized.
Right.
The tax filer number, which was 3 crores in 2014, are 9 crores in 2026. In 12 years, it has jumped threefold.
Okay.
Formalization will happen, is happening across all regulatory landscape. The age-old methods of survey, which is time-consuming, has got of latency, and also chances of duplication. The data collection, if it can be relied on through the government-backed, government-supported databases, for example, the GSTN, the income tax database, BAHAN, the PLFS for the Government of India's public fund management system, right?
Yeah.
So all these databases are great repository of financial data.
Right.
So if we can leverage the government's financial and statistical databases with regard to expenditure, with regard to investment, that can ease data collections in a much better manner, right? And we must also try for achieving greater granularity in the data collection. As we get more sophisticated in that approach of data collections, things will get better and GDP will become more credible, more strong, and will be supportive of the government's policies.
Thanks a lot for talking to us.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much.